Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Very glad you're with us for the Thursday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. If you don't already, please subscribe to our podcast at your favorite platform. And don't forget to subscribe at YouTube, too. Jim, all good martinis today. Not common here on the Three Martini Lunch. Yesterday, I don't know if we even defined them, but it was pretty much all crazy, and we sure had a lot of fun with that. So if you haven't heard yesterday's podcast, please go back and listen to all of that. But today we're going to be talking about more infighting at the DNC involving David Hogg. We're going to be talking about what appears to be a pretty effective first 100 days at killing terrorists by the Trump administration. We're going to also be looking at yet another Senate retirement from a longtime Democrat, Dick Durbin, not running for a sixth term. So, Jim, plenty of good news and more fun to be had today, I'm sure.
Greg, these are all important news, but I understand all of our listeners are saying, yeah, all the political stuff. Who are the Jets and Bears going to take in the draft? And my suspicion is the Jets will take Tyler Warren, tight end from Penn State. I'd be fine with that choice. I know some people doubt whether you want to take a tight end with a number 7 overall pick. I was kind of hoping for Membu or one of the other big tackles. We'll see how it shakes out. But that, listeners, as you hear my expert analysis and my astute reading of all these issues, understand my mind is already at the draft and only really paying attention to that.
Well, thanks for saying that out loud. But yeah, the Bears, not sure if they're going to keep their pick at number 10, try to trade up. There's some talk of running back, some talk of that same tight end from Penn State. But my guess is they'll stick with the trenches. That's where they focused on free agency. And I'd like to keep Caleb Williams alive this season. And so that would be a good thing to do. But before we get to all this great news, Jim, let's talk about fast-growing trees. It's almost the end of April. Hopefully you've started your garden and your flower beds for this spring and summer. But if you haven't, Fast Growing Trees is the place to get your plants and bushes. It's the biggest online nursery in the United States with thousands of different plants and more than 2 million happy customers. They offer easy online ordering, quick delivery, and expert support.
You don't need to have a yard or a lot of space. You can grow lemon, avocado, olive, or fig trees inside your home, and that's on top of the wide variety of houseplants that are available. And you no longer have to drive around to nurseries or big garden centers and make a mess in the back of your car. Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to order online, and your plants will be delivered straight to your door in just a few days.
Yeah, we've enjoyed everything we've gotten from Fast Growing Trees, the big leafy plants. We've loved the spice plants. We love the lemon tree. And if for some reason anything doesn't arrive exactly how you expected it, their Alive and Thrive guarantee will make it right. This spring, get up to 50% off select plants at fastgrowingtrees.com/martini. Plus, use the code Martini at checkout for an extra 15% off your first purchase. Visit fastgrowingtrees.com/martini and use the code Martini. Now's the perfect time to plant. Offer valid for a limited time. Terms do apply. fastgrowingtrees.com/martini. Let's talk about our first good martini, and that is that Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, first elected in 1996, which means that next year is 30 years since 1996. But nonetheless, Dick Durbin has been in D.C. for even longer than that because he was in the House before he was elected to the Senate. But yesterday, he announced that he is not going to seek another term.
The decision of whether to run for re-election has not been easy. I truly love the job of being United States Senator. But in my heart, I know it's time to pass the torch. So I'm announcing today that I will not be seeking re-election at the end of my term.
Well, first of all, I appreciate Dick Durbin for getting to the point early in his announcement, and his whole thing was less than 2 minutes, but it just jumped out at me, man. Dick Durbin got old really, really fast. He just didn't seem that way and not that long ago. But because he is Dick Durbin, he immediately jumped, even in that limited announcement, to pure hyperbole.
Right now, the challenges facing our country are historic and unprecedented. The threats to our democracy and way of life are very real. And I can assure you, I'll do everything in my power to fight for Illinois and the future of our country every day of my remaining time in the Senate.
Okay, whatever. And so we've got Gary Peters retiring in Michigan. We've got Tina Smith retiring in Minnesota. We've got Jeanne Shaheen retiring in New Hampshire, and now Durbin in Illinois, which is, I'm sure, the least likely for the Republicans to pick up. Minnesota's no picnic either. But we'll see who gets in this race. We'll see what the conditions are like. Midterms usually not great for the president's party. But seeing Dick Durbin just leave, I think, is good enough for us today.
Greg, I would concur with that, but I also point out if Durbin hadn't said it very early in that video, we knew where that was going because of the piano music. Dun, 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 dun. That's retirement music. That is not, if I'm running for another term, it'd be dun 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 dun. You can tell from the background music exactly what's going to happen in the scene, exactly where this is going. Yes, you mentioned he got old. He is now 80 years old, or as Joe Biden would call it, young.
Right,
we talked yesterday about Elizabeth Warren. She's turned 76 in June. One of our senators, Mark Warner, who's not seen as one of the old guys, is 70. But this is all going to be addressed by the youthful and energy of the Senate Democratic Outreach Chair, 83-year-old Bernie Sanders. The median age of Senate Democrats is 66 years old. They're always pledging to protect Social Security because they're collecting Social Security. And they oppose burning fossil fuels because they're not that far away. This sets up an open seat race there in Illinois. As much as we'd love to see Republicans competing for as many seats as possible, I don't think you'll get their hopes up. It's obviously generally very lopsided reactions, and I don't even remember the last time Republicans had a competitive Senate race out there. When the news broke yesterday, there was some talk on the NR Slack, and somebody said, at this rate, we're probably going to end up with Rod Blagojevich as the Republican nominee, and simply on the fact that he's become buddies with Donald Trump, appeared on Celebrity Apprentice, and then got a pardon. And you could strangely enough, you could see it happening, and you could even see the slogan, elect Rod Blagojevich, a man who understands a Senate seat is a bleeping valuable thing. He's on the record, really. It's,
If Republicans nominate Rod Blagojevich, I'm going to be very, very disappointed, even though I'm not sure who could actually win.
They should nominate somebody competitive like Alan Keyes.
Well, the last Republican to win was Mark Kirk in the very good Republican midterm year of 2010, which was on the heels of Obama getting elected, the seat getting empty, the Blagojevich scandal, Roland Burris, star of The Fugitive, briefly holding that seat. And then, unfortunately, Mark Kirk had a stroke, couldn't run for re-election, and Republicans have not been competitive, really, in a Senate race since. And, of course, we were robbed of the Barack Obama Mike Ditka special in 2004.
God, wouldn't that have been,
That would have been awesome.
Just for the impressions of Saturday Night Live, the endorsements of the superfans and Bill Swirsky and,
I don't think Ditka would have won, but it would have been closer, and it would have been a very entertaining campaign. But nonetheless, Dick Durbin is leaving. I'm not sure who will pick up the mantle of calling our own troops Nazis or Tim Scott a token, but I'm sure somebody will be that crazy. All right, well, let's talk about BetterHelp, because our podcast is sponsored today by BetterHelp. And one of the things that we all struggle with is finding time to do the things we need to do. And one of those things is maintaining our health, whether it's our physical health or whether it's our mental health. And BetterHelp makes that easier, not only with time, but also with your wallet, because therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, which adds up very quickly. But with BetterHelp Online Therapy, you can save on average up to 50% per session.
With more than 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served more than 5 million people all around the world. And it's convenient, too. You can join a session with just the click of a single button, helping you get therapy into your busy life. And you can switch therapists at any time.
Yeah, so there's the convenience factor as well. You don't even need to get in the car and travel, half an hour or more to get to your doctor's appointment. You can do it in the comfort of your own home. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/3ML to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/3ML. All right, Jim, on to our second good martini now. And as we mentioned, the Trump administration has been pretty busy taking out bad guys in the first few months of this administration. That, according to National Security Adviser Mike Waltz, who was interviewed by Just the News. Hat tip to Free Beacon for catching this story. But here's the statement from Waltz. Quote, President Trump has eliminated 74 named terrorist leaders that the Biden administration wasn't going after, said Waltz, referring to the airstrikes and other operations that Trump has ordered since returning to the White House. Waltz confirmed that the targeted groups have plans to strike the U.S. homeland and Western assets. Quote, I can tell you from ISIS to al-Qaeda to groups like al-Shabaab, all have plots and plans to hit the homeland once again. And if you look under the Biden administration with a wide open border, that was incredibly dangerous. Just the News confirmed Waltz's numbers with military and intelligence officers. And meanwhile, Waltz also noting that Trump has secured the release of 45 American hostages held by hostile regimes and terrorist groups, which he calls, quote, an incredible achievement in just a couple of months. And Jim, I've certainly been aware of some of those hostage releases. 45 is a much bigger number than I would have guessed if somebody had just asked me out of the blue. So not sure exactly how they're defining terrorists or leaders here, but obviously they're from groups that mean us a lot of harm. And we've gotten Americans rescued from places that don't love us too much either. So assuming these numbers are accurate, which they appear to be, great job.
So, Greg, I was very excited when you put this on the list of potential stories to talk about on today's podcast. Credit to Just the News and credit to the Free Beacon. But I'm curious, how did you first hear about this story?
I stumbled across it looking for stories today.
Okay, because Mike Waltz just sent me this message directly on Signal. I am another one of those JGs that just accidentally gets sucked into his thing and sent it out there. But I like seeing the news anyway. I'm glad to get this little bit of ahead of the curve. But no, first of all, no offense to the guys at Just the News. I checked. It's I believe it's Solomon, who used to be over at the Washington Times. Yep. I actually kind of think this is the sort of thing that if the administration has the time and bandwidth to do this, maybe you do a full briefing on it. Maybe you show us the faces of these guys, or the faces of what these guys used to look like, and where you did, and details of the strikes. And he talks about how they all have plots and plans to hit the homeland once again. I presume these plots were not on the verge of a ticking bomb, Jack Bauer season of 24, but I imagine they were doing this. This is one of the probably the key primary duties of the government, and I think this is a great accomplishment, and I think they should lay it out more. I think this is the sort of thing where it's worth letting us know. If those of us you're following, I'd seen a couple of U.S. Central Command would generally put out a statement. Early in the year, I was in Syria, and so I was paying attention very much to what the U.S. was doing in Syria. A couple of these guys got struck there. I believe a couple were struck in Iraq. Credit to them. This is fantastic. I think this is all really good. And again, I think at a time when people are less than fully assured by what the president and this team are doing on tariffs, less than fully assured of what's going on, some negotiations with Russia and Ukraine and with the Iranians and things like that, talk about stuff like this, which is one of the primary duties and which, as far as we can tell, is a shining success and probably one that deserves more attention than it's getting.
Yes, and it harkens back. We talked about this once before, but it was several weeks ago when Trump announced on probably Truth Social that we had successfully taken out some terrorist figures in Somalia, which I assume is al-Shabaab. And he ended his tweet in all caps, quoting Liam Neeson's character from Taken, saying, "We will find you and we will kill you." So apparently they're doing a pretty good job of following up on that. And
I am a man of very particular skills that make me a nightmare for people like you.
Exactly. And in terms of the freed Americans, I'm sure in some cases we gave back people that we'd rather keep behind bars, but I don't think we've given back anyone the caliber of Victor Boot and some of these other very shady figures that ended up getting swapped for Americans in prior administrations. So, or even the Bo Bergdahl situation a while back. So assuming this is all true, very, very good work by the administration. Well, we were just talking about where we got our news from, and we talked about Just the News and Free Beacon and that sort of thing. So where do you get your news from? Well, you should be taking a look at Ground News, which doesn't produce its own news, but it's an aggregate which tells you how major stories and other stories are getting covered from left, right, and center. The example we've used over the last couple of days is when Chris Van Hollen was down in El Salvador, and the left said he was standing up to tyrants, and the right said, yeah, this guy's kind of ignoring the fact that we're pretty sure he's an MS-13 gang member. And so you need to know the full context. It's just good to know how the other side views issues so you can understand the debate as well. And so when it comes to Ground News, it offers diverse perspectives and avoids manipulative algorithms and gives you a fuller picture of the news.
With Ground News, you get details about the source of your information, including if the news outlet has a political bent, how reliable their reporting is, and who owns them, empowering you to compare how different news stories from around the world cover the same story. So expand your view of the news by signing up for your Ground News account today and get access to the mobile app, website, browser extension, and exclusive newsletters so you can have a well-rounded view of the world, think critically about what you read, and find common ground between perspectives.
So visit groundnews.com/martini today to get 40% off the Ground News Vantage plan and get access to all of their news analysis features. That's groundnews.com/martini for 40% off the Ground News Vantage plan for a limited time only.
The people out there that follow their politicians off a cliff are a bit of a problem.
The Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski. Every day, Chris helps unpack the connection between politics and the economy and how it affects your wallet.
Many pensions are down billions after the market sell-off from the tariffs. Could this mean pension cuts down the road? Some people out there fail to see the forest for the trees.
Whether it's happening in D.C. or down on Wall Street, it's affecting you financially. Be informed. Check out the Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.
All right, Jim, on to our final good martini today, and it's a follow-up to a very fun martini from earlier in the week where Democratic National Committee Vice Chair David Hogg causing problems for the DNC. Who could have ever figured this out? Oh, anybody who was paying attention. But back then, just a couple days ago, David Hogg was on TV and telling anyone who would listen, look, there are some Democrats who just need to go. There are Democratic incumbents who are not fighting hard enough against this administration or fighting for the progressive agenda. And so my PAC is going to be pushing different candidates to defeat these Democratic incumbents in primaries. Well, that's not going over very well at the Democratic National Committee, including with the brand new chairman, Ken Martin, who said today that party officers can't be both the referee and also the player at the same time. You have to make a decision. Martin's remarks came as he held fast, and this is according to Politico, to a stronger neutrality pledge for party officers, a proposal he's expected to call for during a DNC member call Thursday afternoon. Hogg ignited a firestorm in the party when he pledged last week to spend millions of dollars funding challenges to asleep-at-the-wheel Democrats in the primaries. Again, back to Mr. Martin, quote, as I've said to him, meaning David Hogg, if you want to challenge incumbents, you're more than free to do that, but just not as an officer of the DNC, because our job is to be neutral arbiters. So, Jim, part of me thinks he just wants David Hogg out of the meetings, but also, this kind of reminds me of 2016 when Debbie Wasserman Schultz wasn't exactly playing fair between Hillary and Bernie, and Donna Brazile was giving Hillary the debate questions. And so I think the Democrats are probably still a little sensitive about getting caught with their thumb on the scale.
Just one little kind of late-breaking development on this story. David Weigel tweeted earlier today, Hogg tells me that if the DNC votes to prevent members from intervening in primaries, he will not leave the PAC or quit his DNC role. Apparently, I'm just going to keep doing it. And then he says, if they decide to remove me, I don't take it personally. This is a strategic disagreement here. Well, one, you can take it personally. I think it's not because we're keeping you around for your charming personality. You can almost read between the lines of that Ken Martin statement. Oh no, what will I do without David Hogg around to help me? And we can have a lot of laughs about this, but I'll just kind of observe it's a further reflection in our politics of people not really understanding the roles of what each person does. Traditionally, the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee or the Republican National Committee, for that, like you've rarely heard of those people. They are very rarely big players on social media. They're maybe you get a retired, elected official every now and then, but generally those are behind the scenes roles, which basically means you're involved in fundraising, you're involved maybe in planning, maybe there's a little bit of candidate recruitment and stuff like that. But by and large, really that's more of a DCCC job, a DSCC job. Democratic Governors Association. Generally, the DNC is just, let's raise money, let's organize a convention. And those are the two big things that they do. And maybe sort out the primary rules. Those are the three things the national committees do. And they're not necessarily meant to be, maybe for lack of a better term, gadflies. They're not supposed to attract a lot of, certainly, maybe the chairman goes on Meet the Press once every few months and makes the, flies the flag, so to speak, and makes the argument for the party. But by and large, these are like organizational roles. I had this point about a whole bunch of the cabinet officials that came in, really for several administrations now. Speaking to the press is one part of the job for these leadership positions, but it's not the whole job. And a lot of the evaluations of whether somebody is good for these sorts of things is how do they handle, what do we think of them when they're in front of the cameras? If they're good at that, great. I think we can debate whether David Hogg is actually that good in front of the cameras or whether he just comes across as some snot-nosed punk you want to smack. But the other, even if he was good at it, well, then maybe you want him as the press secretary or as some sort of public spokesman role. You don't necessarily need him as vice chair. Like, what do you actually want these people to do? And so I feel like there's the other question is if David Hogg really wanted to get rid of a bunch of Democratic incumbents, why did he run for DNC chair? Had he met anybody at the DNC? Did he know anything about the organization before he chose to run? And then the next question to everybody else at the DNC, if this is such a problem, if you didn't want him launching this insurgency against your incumbents, particularly vulnerable incumbents, why did you elect David Hogg? Like, why are you, what, you had to have somebody else open for that job, and just it's a reflection of this, I don't know if the term is mediaization or just this social mediaization, this idea that anybody with a big enough social media profile probably would be good in a particular job, when in fact, most jobs are not about self-promotion. And I think somebody like David Hogg is really, really good at self-promotion.
But the good news here is that no matter what happens with David Hogg and his position with the DNC, it looks like they're going to be fighting against each other all the way to the midterms, or at least the primaries of the midterms, which can only be fun.
So David Hogg, don't leave too quickly.
Or if you do leave, just keep, sending up people against the incumbents and making everybody spend a ton of money on the
We'll give you a list of vulnerable Democratic incumbents straight from the NRCC who we think are letting you guys down the most.
Yes.
You need a big, long, nasty, expensive primary challenge. That's what those folks deserve.
Yes, spend all your money against other Democrats and have very little left for Republicans, and especially get the furthest left person you can in swing districts. That's really the way to go. Jim, have a great day. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast if you don't already. Please encourage your friends to do so as well. We'd love to have them listening. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Thursday and join us Friday for our special look at the first 100 days of the second Trump administration.